to the coffee break faster. Hello. We are here, I guess, with our panel of speakers to discuss, well, AI and digital twins, and also how do our speakers here in the industry make actually use of these two technologies to transform real-time decision-making. My name is Georgios Konstantinou. I'm an associate professor at the University of New South Wales, where I run the real-time simulation laboratory. And I have to say that my background is in power engineering, so I do power electronics and power systems, where the whole concept and the whole notion of digital twins is probably quite lagging what I see here in the presentations about buildings and building management. And I would say that this is probably because the speed and the fidelity that we need to get our digital twins to work in the power industry, because we're trying to understand how a power system operates down to the millisecond level, where that's the point where we're starting actually getting useful information, is really challenging. And we do have some very good examples, I think, that relates back to quite a lot of your background here in the audience, in civil, in construction, like inspection, for example, of transmission lines, where we're looking at the structural and the civil aspects of the power system. But when it comes to the electrical aspect and trying to understand our power system and try to make real-time decisions based on what we see and the algorithms that we have running on top of our real system or even of our models in a real-time simulation, is still not to the level that we would trust it to start using it in the field. But hopefully our speakers here will come back with much better examples from their own industry and applications where we do have AI and digital twins being used for this particular application. I will let our speakers introduce themselves, and just throwing the first question out, probably we have reached this time now that everyone has an idea what a digital twin is, but now we use this umbrella term of AI to describe a lot of different technologies. We're talking about AI, but we are maybe referring to machine learning, might be referring to expert systems, might be referring to symbolic AI, things like large language models and generative AI. So as means of introduction, what would be the thing that is AI in your industry, and what do you use for these real-time decisions and asset operations? And also, where do you come from and what's your name?
Hello, nice to see everybody. My name's Rowan. I work for Laing O'Rourke. I'm leading up Laing O'Rourke Australia's artificial intelligence efforts here, have been doing that for the last little while. It's an interesting question. What is AI? I think it is, well, it's the latest buzzword off the ranks. I've worked in innovation construction now for a while, did augmented reality for a big time, virtual reality, all those sorts of things. While I denigrate AI by saying it's a buzzword, it is actually the only technology I've seen from that panoply of emerging technologies that I think actually has the most genuine chance of creating the transformative value that the construction industry needs to hit these productivity improvements, which are so desperately required. So what do we mean when we say AI? As you've mentioned, it's actually a whole bunch of different things. There's data science involved with it. There is the actual infrastructure systems that undergird it. Fundamentally, though, what modern AI is now a highly commoditized way that anybody, regardless of their technical background or lack thereof, can engage with expert digital systems in a way to extract value in a way that they were never able to before. And I think that's actually very technology agnostic. It's not just saying, oh, it's large language models, oh, it's some sort of classifier type technology. AI is a way for us to augment our decision-making capabilities, and it is actually lots of little things that all need to come together, not just on the technology front, but on the human front, actually. And that, to me, is the most challenging aspect of artificial intelligence for us at the moment. I know that's a very nebulous answer. I'm not just like discreetly saying this is AI. But the reason for that is because it's a very nebulous space. It's very emerging. Every week, every day, we're seeing some transformative new development in the realm of what we broadly call AI at all aspects of it, right? We've recently seen DeepSeek released from the Chinese research group, which brought down the cost of inference by something like 20 times, right? Which is going to completely change the economic model of AI. That's going to keep happening week on week on week on week on week. And so when we say what is AI, it's not a technology, it's a way that we think about our industry and how we engage with the work that we do. And there's no one component which makes that up. So sorry, we could talk for a long time about that. I'll pass over to the rest of the panel.
Hi everyone, I'm Claudel Taylor. I'm the General Manager for Innovation Integration at CIMIC Group. I hope all of you know who CIMIC is, but if you don't, CIMIC owns a number of brands in the market which you probably are familiar with: CPB Contractors, Leighton Asia, Thiess, Sedgman, Pacific Partnerships. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone there. So I thought, could I, if you would indulge me, I might like to answer your question in a more practical sense. So how actually we at CIMIC Group are trying to embrace AI, especially in that decision-making process. So what we've invested in at CIMIC is we've invested in visualization tools where we've used a gaming engine to basically represent the construction site or, you know, a site that people are operating. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to basically bring together a group of stakeholders, and we can look at the visualization representation of what we plan to build. Everyone comes together, everybody says, this is the construction methodology we'd like to use to build this particular scope of works. Everyone agrees to that. And then we say, okay, so that is what we intend to do. Then when we move into the execution phase, what we do is we say, are we delivering on what we said we intended to do? And that's when that real-time analytics comes into it. So what we've done in our visualization platform is that we've started to track resources. So we track plant and equipment, vehicles, and in some of our Asian projects, we're allowed to track people. And what that enables us to do is basically see how that equipment is performing in the 4D model. And then what we do is we apply some metrics. So for example, what we've said is for a particular piece of equipment, we don't want that to be idle for, say, more than 4% of the time. So when it's idle for more than 4% of the time, the rule comes back to us and says that equipment's been sitting there idle. So obviously what we are trying to do is we're trying to reduce the waste of that. So we want to stop excessive waiting time. We want to stop defects. We want to stop excessive movement, you know, inventory lying around for too long, that sort of thing. So that platform, that visualization platform, which is showing us what's happening in near real time, I won't say it's real time, but near real time, is giving us that picture. But where AI, I think, is going to come for us is in that machine learning. So instead of the rule saying, hey, that piece of equipment has been idle for more than 4% of the time, go and do something about it, what we want the AI to tell us is like, actually, based on a pattern, we can see that that equipment is going to stay idle. So go and do something about it now. So that's where we intend to go. We also intend to use computer vision. So we want to be able to, you know, we've started experimenting with putting cameras on pieces of plant so it will tell the driver, you know, someone's moved in or something's moved in their no-go zone. But I can see that in the future that is going to be something that's going to give us that real-time insight. And then the other thing is the natural language processing. So we want to be able to enable our, you know, the people that work for us to be able to interrogate the data in a more human way. So ask questions about, you know, tell me about a particular activity. Tell me about, you know, am I going to cause waste? What can I do about it now?
Thanks. Hi, my name is Roy Lorenzen. I'm a solution manager at Certus Digital. So Certus is a IBM business partner. So our main role is in taking all of those pieces of technology and answering the questions, I guess, or solving the problems that our customers have in terms of making sure they're getting the right outputs. In terms of the use of AI in digital models, I guess the problem with going third on a panel, or fourth, is that a lot of what's been said is all kind of there, right? And we're all sort of on that same journey that we're going with. But our driver is very much in and around you be able to kind of utilize your digital models and the different AI tools to be able to present options, I guess, in terms of and early identification or early warnings around what might happen. So, in order to be able to predict or identify where somebody might have to go and actually visit a particular asset. So there's certainly a lot of scope in that space in terms of what we're doing, but a lot of it is we don't really know a lot of the questions that we need to try and answer through AI and digital models yet. So certainly very much a long learning process involved and journey in terms of being able to do it. I don't think there's too many issues around having the pieces of tech to be able to kind of do that. That seems to be evolving rapidly in that space. But it's around kind of finding the right resources to be able to make sure that we're there ready to be able to answer those questions. Data obviously has a big role to play in that. There's probably more data than is really necessary that's being collected. But you never know what you're actually going to need as part of that to be able to answer those questions. So we're very much looking at it from how do we surface this information, how do we surface the questions that need to be looked at, but visualize that in a way that is user-friendly for our end users. We certainly are very user-focused in terms of everything that we deliver from our solutions. So making sure that everything from the operators through to your field teams have that access to that information.
Thanks, Giorgio. My name is Daniel Mien. I've got a PhD in Innovation Management. I work for North Projects as their National Director of Advisory. I've been involved with the delivery of construction projects for the last 30 years and setting up of asset management businesses in the last 15 years. I think there are a lot of definitions on AI, which you can use ChatGPT to get definitions. But similar to Claudel, I've had personal experience of getting involved with AI projects, specifically using machine learning and computer vision for local government and transport clients as well. And where I started was to understand what are the strategic challenges for them rather than just jumping into AI. And that's the most important thing that is my advice, that when you work with clients, that's the first thing that you should be looking at. And in that case, we were able to reduce their backlog maintenance by 30%. We were able to improve the responsiveness to fix some of the defects by 10%. And we were also able to reduce the actual backlog by 10% as well. And then they asked us to further look at decarbonization. And so we fixed that technology on garbage trucks. So when the garbage trucks were doing their weekly run, they were able to actually push the defects data into the work orders. So that's the sort of practical example. And we also, what we did was that the software was designed to be aligned to their prioritization model, so that the contractor who was doing fixing the defects would just focus on priority elements rather than everything. So that's a practical example.
Since you're onto that, Daniel, can you explain exactly what you implemented in order to get all these gains that you've mentioned? As in, how did you end up getting that 30% improvement in your operations? Like, practically, what can we...
So I can, within confidence, I can do a bit, but not too much. So it was actually, it was partnering up with an organization who had some people who worked for QUT. They were PhD students, actually, and they had an actual software. And so we provided working with them, we actually provided the client issues and challenges, and then worked with them to actually align the software to the specific challenges that they were looking at, aligning the prioritization model to their priorities as well, and then installed that software initially on a maintenance ute. So it was initially a 54-kilometer pilot that we ran, and then I did a benefits realization after we had done that, in line with all these different areas of backlog, safety, customer complaints, And then we were able to achieve what we had agreed with them. And then we extended that to their whole network for the 3 years. And that contract is still working, although I have moved from that organization, but that contract is still working.
Thank you. Now, I think we covered a bit the AI part, or what we perceive as AI, but I guess our panel includes also the digital models. And from also our experience in trying to do similar things in power systems, that's where the complexity of implementation appears. You have data, and you can do a lot of analytics with your data, but the moment you start integrating your digital models, then it becomes a bit more complicated because you also need to validate your digital models. Are they actually telling you the truth or not? And then you can start making decisions based on that. So can you share some experience on how or what challenges you might have at the moment integrating all these data analytics and AI algorithms with the digital models that you might be using in your industry?
I think it's let's not talk about challenges, let's talk about opportunities. That's the innovation way. So one of the big things that AI can do is act as a universal translator between often quite disparate and complicated systems. We've worked with a lot of our digital engineers and got a whole bunch of different case studies. And there's an interesting insight between the perspectives of people who are doing the work versus potentially more senior people in the organization who are managing the work. But people who are the digital engineers charged with actually delivering this work might, for instance, as an abstracted example, which bears some semblance to reality, put out a 3-month contract for some sort of translational work. You've got system A in a digital world and system B in a digital world. You've got to take information from that system and put it into this system. It's kind of the same information, but it's a different standard, needs to be refactored in a slightly different way. That would be a 3-month contract that would be typically given to an external vendor of some description. Our digital engineer, a very young, bright person, came up and said, I reckon if I wrote a small API augmented with one of the commercially available large language models, could probably turn that around in something like 1 to 4 weeks, delivered entirely internally. And so that's transforming a piece of work, which was probably not considered very deeply to begin with, but was given as a 3-month external contract, into something that now has potentially a 1-week turnaround. And not just having that 1-week turnaround, you actually have a much deeper understanding of the problem being solved and the process that is being used to solve that problem. And when we talk about the opportunities in AI, that's a big one for me. So part of the core of Laing O'Rourke's AI strategy is about how does this actually augment humans. We call it artificial intelligence, but at the end of the day, humans are the ones who have agency in the world and can do things, right? Artificial intelligence can't do anything. It needs a human to be actually there to sort of manifest will upon the world. And if we can integrate those processes with our younger people, our digital engineers, and enable them to basically act on these opportunities that they're already seeing, there are absolute step changes in productivity that could occur all across the system. That example I just gave now is just one of hundreds of examples of similar work which would happen across the entire system. If we want to go back to challenges, how do you actually do that, right? It's a real issue. Cybersecurity is always a big component of this. Laing O'Rourke has a very good sort of cybersecurity team, and we've been working with them about what does it mean for sharing some of this operational, in some cases quite sensitive organizational data with these third-party systems. Possibly the end run for that would actually be self-hosting of your own large language models. I mentioned DeepSeek earlier. That actually is potentially practicable for a large organization to actually run entirely on their own infrastructure, their own large language model, which then requires no data to ever actually leave the organization. And that would then enable, in some ways, nearly unfettered access to the insights and, as mentioned before, those translational activities that these large language models can yield. The challenges there, though, are just always the same human challenges in innovation, which we won't go into here. But how do you manage that process? How do you get people on board with it? How do you train people up with this? How do you get people excited about it? How do you somehow get through what is sometimes the morass of corporate politics to understand who actually owns this? Is it IT? Is it the innovation department? Is it the digital engineering department? Is it the strategy department? Who actually is the one that is like corralling and bringing all this together? And those are very, very human problems, not particular to AI.
Any way you like.
Okay, so I think your question was how are we starting to use the data in our models. And then I think a theme across what was happening yesterday.
I would also add, how do you trust your digital models
Oh,
to integrate also with
Okay.
your data and your AI?
Yeah. So, yeah, everybody knows that we've got a lot of unstructured data in our business, and so what we've decided to focus on is trying to put a naming convention across all of our data so that we can basically be interoperable across all the systems that we use. So we've been educating our business around, we use the concept of a barcode. So we say, you know, when you go to the supermarket and you scan a packet of biscuits, it doesn't matter which supermarket you go to, every time that barcode tells you, you know, who the manufacturer was, what the price is, you know, I don't know, what else, you know, the barcode. So then what we want to do is develop a barcode for our data. So we call that the project data structure, and we're building little tools or utilities that help projects to go through and say, you know, what type of asset am I building? What are who are the disciplines involved? What is the scope of work, etc. And then it comes out with that coding structure. And then once we start to normalise the data according to this structure, then we're able to be interoperable with all of our systems and therefore get more meaningful insights out of that data. So that's our approach.
Yeah, thanks, Giorgio. I guess in terms of when we think about challenges, I know we're talking about digital models and AI and things, but it's really people. So that kind of confidence and that trust in sort of what you're getting in terms of what the AI is telling you or what you're being able to see, it's really kind of having that confidence level that you're there. One thing, I guess, in terms of what we look at in terms of whenever we're producing a model is, what is the confidence factor that the AI is telling us? You know, is it I'm 80% sure that photo is a pump, right? Or 80% sure that has a crack in it. So it's about making sure that whenever you're getting a response from the AI, that there is that confidence factor there. And that then helps to enable kind of the training of it to get better and better and better. But also, you know, from a people perspective, you know, some of our, let's call it more experienced engineers that are out there, you know, and we saw this when mobile came in, right? Everybody's raving about mobile and everyone needed mobile out there. And the younger engineers took up mobile, no problem. Some of our older engineers were not so keen to all of a sudden be not reliant on their, you know, trusty notebook that they've had and have to adopt this new technology. But it's about, you know, how do you sort of enable those more experienced engineers to be the trainers, to increase the confidence. So in two ways, by having them train, they're providing their confidence level in there, but also they're able to kind of prove out the confidence level that's coming through. So, you know, I know we're talking about digital, but people, to me, is probably the biggest challenge.
I just want to use another real example, data harmonization is a big issue with a lot of our clients, especially bigger asset owners, because they are siloed, and so data is captured in a completely different manner. And so we had 58 councils from New Zealand, and they actually approached us. And they were all capturing data in a different schema, different taxonomy. So actually work with them to write a single code of practice that they use to actually capture the data, and then brought all of that into a digital twin, which then helped us, because of the same schema and same format, we were able to do analytics on the data, and we were able to bring all of the data, and this was specifically for potable water and wastewater, into one platform where we could actually see that in one screen for the whole country, for the 58 councils. And this was a precursor to the 3 Water program.
Sorry, just to follow up something, Roy, you just mentioned a really interesting point about confidence in the AI being able to tell you how confident it is in the answer. There's an interesting shift which happened with AI with the introduction of large language models, where they do not actually have a good understanding of, in fact, they have no understanding of what is real and what is fake. Old school machine learning programs, what you might call a binary classifier, where you basically say, is this a dog or is this a cat, can give you a pretty good statistical thing. It'll say, I think with a 75% confidence that this is a dog, or this is an unsafe work scenario, or this is whatever you're trying to classify. Large language models operate on a fundamentally different paradigm where they actually have no differentiation between falsehood and what is true. And so when we talk about how do we trust our data, it again puts the emphasis back on the people, like you mentioned, right? The importance of having experts in the system is hugely magnified through the use of AI. The ability of having a person who has their own verifiable experience, their own intuition, and their own understanding of the systems that they're working within, the importance of that has actually become 10 times greater with the introduction of AI. It's not the death of expertise with AI, it refracts an even deeper experience, value of that experience. What that means for people who are less experienced, junior engineers, people entering the industry, is an enormous challenge then. But how we build trust into these systems actually just brings it back to how do we trust people? And I think it's a real mistake to think about AI as creating dehumanized systems. It's one where we should actually create even more human systems where we can believe in humans even more.
Now, I'll pick up on that because you mentioned, both Roy and Jeroen mentioned people. And I guess in a small organization where you can be quite nimble and implement all the new technologies relatively quickly. So you had your ChatGPT move to DeepSeek next week, and without a lot of disturbance in your actual operations. But in a larger organization, I would ask, how do you get buy-in from pretty much everyone down the track that actually needs to implement all these things and work with these things? And is there pushback? How do you manage around that? How do you get everyone to work with it? I don't want to go linearly. Whoever wants to
start first?
Jump in this.
Okay, so CIMIC's obviously a very large organisation, and when AI came out, obviously everyone went nuts and everyone was using everything that was publicly available. So we have sort of two approaches for managing and implementing AI in the business. The first is through just our governance process. So we do have a governance process already in place, well established, to manage innovation. So we've adopted the same process to manage any sort of AI initiatives. So basically it's a very quick way. If someone has an idea, they're able to raise that through the innovation process. We do like what we call a business case on a page. It's very quick and people are often racing. But at the same time as running that, I guess that AI, the innovation process, what we did in a practical sense is that we gave all employees in CIMIC access to Azure OpenAI, and at the same time, we blocked all publicly facing Gen AI tools. So you cannot access ChatGPT, for example, when you're in the CIMIC network. And the reason we did that was because there was a lot of uncertainty around confidential information being used in these other publicly facing AI tools. So we gave the employees, OpenAI. They're often racing. So then we've developed up this other philosophy around there's AI for all, AI for some, AI for a few. So the AI for all at the moment is using the OpenAI platform. AI for some is using the innovation process to say, I'd like to use a particular AI tool for this particular reason. So they do their business case on a page and they get approval for that. So an example might be learning and development team wanted to use a tool called Synthesia. So they put that through, got that approved. There's the AI for some. The AI for a few, the more, I guess, literate in that technology space, so very, particularly focused engineers and data scientists, for example, and that's the AI for a few, where they really want to experiment with our intellectual property, and they want to build verticals on top of all that, IP. So that's the AI for a few. That's how we are trying to manage in a large organisation, and it's only to give us visibility around what's happening in the company, and also to be able to see where those, the really valuable innovations are occurring across all of our brands.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
I was just going to say, so in response to your first question, huge challenges, especially from the leadership within organization, because they don't see the value, especially some of the gray-haired people like myself on the board. And then the return on investment. If we are going to invest in this, what are we going to get? So my view has been, and it has sort of had success, is that we can't just relate AI investment to just internal work. It has to be billable work that comes out of it. I'm speaking from a consulting point of view. It has to be directly for a client. And then what we need to do it structurally. We need to start with having an AI policy. Because if we don't have an AI policy, we won't have the data structure, we won't look at cybersecurity, all those aspects. So I think we need to start that. And then, just like I'm an asset management practitioner, just like having a clear line of sight, start with a policy and a strategy so that you have a clear governance structure before you actually invest in it. And that's where you will have the buy-in from the board and the leadership.
Yes, all excellent points. And like stakeholder management, even though it says what? Principal engineer artificial intelligence, sending emails to various stakeholders is probably about 90% of my job. There's a book called The Little Prince. Anyone here has read The Little Prince? I'm sure a few of you have. Very moving tale about a small boy who falls to earth and teaches us about what it means to love each other and to be human. And there's a key quote from that book, which is, if you want to get people to sail and build a ship, to sail the ocean, you don't pull together a bunch of planks of wood. You don't give them an instruction manual on how to build a ship. You don't, teach them the ins and outs of what it means to be a sailor. You get them to yearn for the sea. And that's how we actually can yield change in very large organizations. Governance structures and policies and frameworks are all very, very important. Laing O'Rourke's got a lot of them. I've had to write a whole bunch of those myself. But at the end of the day, what actually makes change is what's inside people's hearts and what do they actually want to make happen in the world. For something like AI, which is potentially hugely transformative, both at the economic level, but also at the societal and political level, you need to find those levers that work for each person inside the organization, which helps them realize, what does this look like for them? That looks different for IT, it looks different for the strategy function, it looks different for the digital function, it looks different for the executive. And what I've found is that talking about AI to these different groups, you need to use very, very different language and very, very different levers when you are basically engaging with them to say, here is a picture of the future that I'm painting for you, here is why you want to be part of this, and here is how together we can help make this happen. And that's how you can really manifest that change, especially in very large organizations. Laing O'Rourke is a multinational organization with so many different departments who talk to each other not as much as they should. You got to find those angles. Otherwise, it'll just be another PowerPoint presentation that sits on some shared drive somewhere, which people occasionally reference.
I'll pick up on this because the example of building a ship to out in the sea is quite interesting, but at the same time, you might want to, let's say, you get the small, I'll quote you in this case, the sugar rush that you get from all these new technologies that are coming into your way of working and your operations. And that's, I don't know, the equivalent of building a ship to go to Sydney Harbour and cruise around. But what about the big one that will give you, that will help you cross the ocean, that will get you 10 years in the future, that will get you the value of the transformation that you're going to get from the AI? How do you make sure that you're actually going to get that? You're going to get the 10x, 100x value from implementing these systems in the future, rather than do something that I'm interested for a week, 2 weeks, and then just decays back into...
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, what I said was all very inspirational and like highfalutin. What does this actually mean, like, on the ground? The way that we look at AI inside Laing O'Rourke is primarily through two lenses. One of them is through a productivity lens, and one of them is through a transformation lens. So
measure them?
Yeah, we measure them, we assess them, we do proper business cases around them.
Give us some examples of how to do that as well. I would be interested.
Well, I gave one just earlier about the digital engineer with this like case study, right? But another one, for example, again, I won't go into details, but our clients and markets function, they obviously write proposals, right, to win work. There are a large number of AI tools which can be used by that function to dramatically and drastically, I wonder if those are different words, maybe slightly, reduce the amount of time it takes to prepare a bid, right? And not just reduce the amount of time, but actually potentially improve the quality of those bids. There's a number of tools out there, and we're looking at a few right now, which can look at your previous bid databases, look at external markets, examine contracts, all that sort of stuff, give you feedback on how you've answered it. Have you answered this question, this question, this question, this question? Obviously, there's generative AI tools where they can just churn out content. We're a little bit more suspicious on the generative side of the component because there is still huge human skill in that sort of crafting of the message. But that can yield immediate productivity benefits, which we can measure. We've got a very well understood pilot process. You know, you do an initial pilot for, let's say, 3 months. You have measures of success for that pilot, i.e., did it reduce the amount of time taken to prepare a bid by, for argument's sake, we'll say 25%? Did it improve the quality of that bid as assessed by the senior personnel? And those are real measures of success that you can then tie back some sort of ROI return to. And that gives you what you call that sugar hit, right? That immediate productivity enhancement. What's more transformative, though, is can you potentially then recycle that savings? So let's say, for argument's sake, you reduce the cost that it takes to prepare a bid by 25%. That can be quite a substantial amount of money. Can we take some of that cost and recycle that back into more foundational process transformation? So let us say, for instance, now we're not just producing bids more quickly, we're actually improving our work winning rate, a bit of a tongue twister there, by, let's say, 5 to 10%. For through an improved quality of bid, through various other processes. We're now actually looking at a vastly larger number. The productivity hit might be, for argument's sake again, let's say $500,000. We've found that the transformation value of that is anywhere from 10 to, in some cases, 50 or 100 times bigger than that, right? Because if Laing O'Rourke won 10% more of the jobs we bid on, that is an enormous number to put on a spreadsheet when you look at the size of jobs that we bid on and the number of jobs that we bid on. And you can apply that to every single function inside the entire business. Here's a short-term sugar hit from productivity enhancement, which you can probably realize within 6 to 12 months. But over the next, say, 36 to 48 months, if you really dig into these processes, what are you doing, why are you doing it, how are you doing it, which a lot of the time people don't want to think about, how they can be transformed via AI, you're looking at a vastly bigger number. And that is one that you obviously then need to track over the longer term.
Any similar experiences you want to share?
Yeah, I'll add to that. First, I guess, Rowan, I want to know how many of your emails and documents are actually written by AI?
For me personally, I try to write really short emails. So for myself, it actually probably takes longer to open up the thing and type it in and say, give me that. So for very short form communications, AI is not actually, I found personally, that useful. Where it is useful, though, is for the longer documents. Deep Research is one that's just been released by OpenAI. We signed up to a subscription to that at the low cost of $200 a month. And it can produce, just for me, it produced, I think yesterday, a 25,000 word research report on, I think it was the dynamics of AI as applied to the Australian construction market, which I really just did because it's something I know a lot about. And I was like, I want to test if this thing can generate reasonable information. And within about 10 minutes, I had a 25,000 word referenced, cited, very well structured research report, which told me an enormous amount about the dynamics of AI in the Australian construction market and how managing contractors may profitably engage with the dynamics of this. And interesting for that as well, the prompt I gave to it, I built using AI. So I essentially used AI to build a research plan, gave that to another AI, then I used another AI to summarize the 25,000 word research report because there's no way I'm reading all of those words. And so, where's the human in the loop there? I'm not entirely sure, trying to work it out myself.
Yeah, very good. So certainly, one of the focuses that we have is very much on what's the output, right? So it's very much what are you actually trying to achieve, what are we trying to get out of it, and then what is the right tool set in terms of being able to use to support that. And sometimes it'll be AI in terms of being able to do that. We also reply to a lot of tenders every year, so it's a very good way to be able to learn based on previous responses and how you sort of build all that sort of stuff up. So very good. Also very good in terms of producing training documentation for standard processes and things as well. So I think there's some very good reasons to go down and use the AI in terms of being able to develop it. But certainly I think, coming back, there's obviously lots of governance and things that you kind of need to have over there. But one of the main things is kind of just make it part of everyday life, right? So it's just another thing that you have available to you, just like opening up Word or everyone's favorite BI reporting tool, Excel. AI just becomes another tool set to enable you to be able to do your role, and providing you've got the right guidelines around it and training and that, then it certainly just becomes another tool.
But on that point, so for example, you know, we've got some people that are getting very excited about using AI to write their swims, and we have a very senior person in our organisation that says, I really don't want you to do that. And the reason he doesn't want us to do that is because writing swims is actually a very good education tool for engineers to learn what they need to do to write a safe work method statement. So it's how do you find a balance? You know, so we are working through that, and we're saying, okay, well, let's look at being able to, you know, use our template, because the template complies to regulation. So we still use the same template. We get it to populate the swim for the engineer, but we also try and educate the AI to explain why it put that information there, and to get the engineer to start, you know, and it comes back to trust again, but explaining why they put that data there so that the engineer still learns. And the same for, you know, like the legal profession. You know, a very large legal firm decided to use AI to write all the advices, and then later they realised, well, actually, that's how all our graduate lawyers were learning, you know, how our business performs. So then they rewrote that agent to say, explain to the lawyer why this information was used. So it becomes an education piece as well as a productivity tool.
Now, I'll take a bit of self-interest in the next question. Coming from a university, we graduate students. What do you in the industry want to see as a future-ready, in this context, AI and digital literacy, work-ready graduate? What do you think your ideal student graduate would be? Do you want them trained at all, like in that area, or?
Yeah, look, it's an area where it's really hard to say what training should look like, because 2 years from now, who knows where AI systems will be, and so how do universities get ahead of that? I mean, I did a PhD as well in engineering, and so I appreciate the challenges that universities face with how they engage with this new education model. Personally, for myself, so working in an innovation function, I'm less interested in technical skills as I am interested in people's ability to act. And I think it'll be a mistake for graduates to come out of universities thinking, I've got a head full of knowledge, now all I need to do is sit down here and apply it, versus I have a fire in my heart and I want to get out there and make change in the world. And certainly what I've seen, the people who are most successful, broadly described in this innovation space, are those who have that second sort of education and mindset versus the first. And that is something that can be taught. There's courses on entrepreneurialism, there's courses on what it means to be an innovator. And I would like to see more of that from graduates, because we're getting to the point where knowledge is so commoditized, it doesn't really matter what you know. You can probably learn whatever it is you need to do very quickly, assuming you know, that you've got that sort of baseline level of ability to do so. So in terms of graduate, it's very hard for universities. But that's what I'd be looking for. I'm not particularly interested in their background. I'm interested in where they want to go.
Just going to jump in. So I'm an adjunct professor at UQ as well, so get this question all the time. And so I would be asking for three things. First of all, especially for civil engineering students and structural engineering, the understanding of whole of life cycle. That's pretty poor with a lot of the students we come through. And then use of different digital technology across these stages. And then on the people side, the ability or the willingness to be able to work with oldies like me, because they are very digital savvy. So how do you include me in that journey? And I come across that all the time on projects as well, because in some cases they think it's their way or the highway. So I think that willingness, that sort of education process, which is more people skills, I think if we can do, if you guys at universities can do these three things, it will make our life so easy.
Thank you. We do have 3.5 more minutes. Do you have any questions from the audience? That we do have a panel.
I agree. I think we should be focusing a lot more on potential and a lot less on actual. But I find that a lot of places I've worked, the hiring authorities and HR managers might either not agree or not know. And so my question is, what are you doing and what can you advise us on how to get more people to think that way and then have your organization behave that way?
Yeah, when I have a good answer for that, I'll make sure I share it with you. I think, look, fundamentally, part of it is you got to be. So I have a bit of a unique role inside, I guess, the construction industry and inside of Laing O'Rourke, where I'm inside this bespoke innovation function. I actually never studied construction. I have no idea how a building stands up or how to deliver a project or, in fact, anything practical in the construction industry. And I actually was brought into Laing O'Rourke purely for that reason, right, is to try and provide some outside perspectives and a bit of sort of new energy and thinking. How successful I've been in that is probably up for debate. Why that was able to happen, though, was because Laing O'Rourke is still a privately owned enterprise by the O'Rourke family, and the O'Rourke family believed the industry needs change, right? And so they were able to basically personally create that early space where I was able to join the organization and sort of maintain that sort of enclave of thinking. What that means for me now, though, and how I'm trying to prosecute that is I obviously have less levers of influence in the ability in the organization than the owner does. But what I do have is a very public and visible role and the ability to engage with pretty much every senior leader in the organization to try and bring them along to my way of thinking. And you basically just do it step by step by step. You don't assume that you can just chaperone people to the Holy Land immediately. You need to understand where they're at and meet them there. And you need to just slowly create those safe pathways that people can walk down that brings them towards where you think this should go. So in terms of hiring, for instance, I'm trying to build very much deeper links with our learning and development function, who obviously manages the graduate intake and sort of what graduates are looking for, what skills we're going to train them up in, all that sort of stuff. Part of the way that I'm trying to do that is to understand what are their KPIs, what are their metrics. They have various metrics around what is the, something like what is the innovative potential of this employee, and how do we, I'm not sure how you measure it, but how you get their innovation score from 0.2 to 0.8, for argument's sake. That, for me, then, is a great lever for AI. I can say, you know what? I reckon if we introduce AI education and training into this graduate cohort, we can then help you take the metrics that you're being assessed on. And so it's like a real win-win, right? And then they are able to go off and say, hey, look, AI actually really helped us in our day-to-day metrics. They can refract that then through their next year's operations about what does that mean for them. They can then think about what does that mean for our accelerated development programs? What does that mean for things like our sort of management and executive coaching programs, all that sort of stuff. So it's just those little incremental ways that you can sort of build those bridges, and people get there.
So as we close then, do we see ourselves being in the Digital Built World Summit 2030 in a room of 500 people, or are we overhyping this and eventually we see this dying? Like, what's the danger of having all this conversation now where everything is at the hype moment, and what happens if a bubble bursts in the near future, and where do we stay with this?
So I've been in innovation construction a long time. I've worked with, you name a construction technology buzzword, and I've done something with it. AI is pretty much the only one that I think has actually yielded genuine value, not just to some hypothetical value, like value in the here and now. And so there will be, I think, a bit of a deflating of the AI like hype as time goes on, because obviously it's a very, very hot commodity at the moment. But AI is the worst it's ever going to be right now, which I know sounds like a strange statement, but it's already pretty good, and it's getting better and better and better every single month. So we are currently at the worst AI is ever going to be. So think about how capable it is now and what that's going to look like 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now, and what that's going to mean for our organizations. potentially a very big question.
Just a quick one. So seeing all these faces and looking at the list of the people, I think we've got too many consultants and contractors. It will be good to have some clients who actually own assets and who need this technology. So that might be for the organizers for the next year. If they can focus on that, that would be awesome.
Right, Claudel, are we here because of the hype, or are we here because of the future?
No, we're not here because of the hype. And I definitely think that how you explained it, Ron, was very eloquent. I agree. I think this is the worst that AI is ever going to be. It's only going to get better, and we need to be able to harness it in a way, like from our perspective anyway, is to try and increase our productivity and reduce the waste on our site, and that's where we're really focused.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a lot of it is going to be around how we learn from any of the failures that happen along the way as well. Because that's really the only way to kind of make it better and better is from learning from those. But agree as well, it'd be great to kind of get some more real life experience, I guess, in terms of how it is helping different organisations as well in the room and hear from them.
Well, thank you. It's good to hear from everyone that we're not here because of the hype, and it's not the hype that's driving this, it's because we see real value in the implementation of AI into asset management and the operations and real-time decisions. With that, I think we are out of time. We're actually over time. Took us a bit longer, but again, Daniel, Roy, Claudel, Rowan, thanks again for this very interesting panel, and thank you all for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, panel. And the good news is you get to have conversations with them over morning tea next door. So we'll break now, and we'll be back in the room. I probably should have looked, 11:15, whatever it says in your app.
11:30.
11:30. Thanks, Rod. If anyone's got any suggestions about how to improve the conference, Rod's your person. It's hiding somewhere with the mic.
It's noted on the clients. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Cool. Okay, we'll see you guys back in the room shortly.